Hello and welcome to Off the Fence, a podcast where we deconstruct difficult decision making to try to figure out what keeps us stuck and, more importantly, how we get unstuck. I'm your host, Karen Covey, a former divorce lawyer, mediator, and arbitrator turned coach, author, and entrepreneur. With me today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Michael Cohen. And Michael is a former corporate executive who went through a litigated divorce himself and decided to transition his career to divorce mediation as a result. He saw firsthand the impact of a litigated divorce on his own children, and he vowed to help other families get through divorce in a more amicable way. Michael's goal is to help parents become good co-parents so their family can remain connected as a family, even though the form of their family will be structured in a different way. Michael has his CPA and is adept at helping couples with the financial decisions that they need to make during and after their divorce. But his passion is working with parents and helping them to divorce in a healthy way and to become strong co-parents, all while spending significantly less than what they would spend in litigation. Michael, welcome to the show.
Karen, thank you so much. Love the introduction. Thank you.
It is my pleasure, and I'm so thrilled to have you. And I want to start in the beginning with your story. And I touched on a little bit in the introduction, but if you could tell me what drove you to become a divorce mediator, start wherever you want to start.
To be honest, I went into the corporate world. I did it because that's what my passion, but I really always wanted to work one-on-one with people. And then I went through a divorce myself, and I was just very, very frustrated with the legal process. Not by any means of bad people, just the process. It was very contentious. It added a lot of stress. It affected my kids. In the corporate world, my role was a people leader. I was used to bringing people to win-wins, finding a vision for people to align to and move to. So I knew I could do that. So I had a passion. This is a passion project. I went to Northwestern. I got certified like so many others have, and I built out the foundation. And then I had the opportunity to pivot, and I did it. And I've been thrilled. It's been a wonderful, wonderful career for me.
I love your passion. I love what you're bringing to the table in terms of mediation. And it sounds like you've got kind of both sides, the passion for the kids, but also the experience as a CPA with the money, which is also really important in mediation. So I know your passion lies with children. Tell me what would you expect or counsel for co-parents, for people who are coming to divorce, they've got kids, they're thinking of mediating, what would you say to them?
Well, a lot of people come to mediation and they think their most valuable assets are their house, their retirement accounts, etc. But their most valuable asset is their children. And how they divorce is how their children are affected by divorce. I've seen it. My daughter was alienated from me. My boys are great, but they both went through a hard time in the middle of a divorce. And I've got a lot of life stories that I talk about and how that has affected them and how it has put the stress of my prior marriage and divorce on them. And it breaks my heart that they have to deal with that. So when I talk to parents, I really focus on how do they how do they minimize the impact of divorce on their children? So children are divorced, right? When you go through a divorce, it changes a child's perspective. But if parents can do it in a way that's emotionally healthy for their children, it doesn't have to, what I would say, change their life arc. It doesn't have to change their development, their growth as a person. Yes, their story has changed, but they could still grow up to love their parents, feel loved by a family, and feel supported by a family. And that gives children confidence, and it allows them to be successful. When parents are going through a litigated divorce, it takes a long time. There's a lot of contention. The parents aren't talking to each other because their lawyers generally say, don't talk to each other about the divorce. So the kids feel it, and kids are so smart. Not only do they see things, they hear things, and they feel emotions. And when a litigated divorce takes a year and a half, 2 years, kids go through that and they're affected. So my goal is to try to get them to get to an amicable decision quicker while talking to each other and learning how to communicate with each other so that their kids not only hear them say they both love them, but they feel that and they trust that.
So what would you say to the divorcing couple? They come and they're not totally sold on mediation, but they've heard it's a way to save time and money. So they're sitting in front of you, or maybe they're not, they're deciding whether to sit in front of you, and they say, look, we can't even agree on what time of day it is. How are we going to mediate?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like if you could picture whoever we're talking to, your listeners right now, they're in a situation where they have conflict with somebody. That conflict is high, it's real, it's very abrasive sometimes. You introduce a third party into the conversation, and all of a sudden they're watching their P's and Q's a little bit, and they're both explaining their logic a little different. And that person in the middle now is translating what one person is saying so that the other person could hear it, and the temperature comes down. So I've seen people who have contention when you introduce a third party who's unbiased and will reframe the conversation and help them listen to each other, it really brings the temperature down. And it does work. It's not easy. Some clients are easier than others, but it can get done. And the third party who's a neutral facilitator does a tremendous job to get the conversation going.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that just by having another person in the room, sitting there and listening to the conversation changes. Am I getting that?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's like a buffer, like the mediator becomes the buffer. The mediator has to have thick skin, has to have patience because they absorb the hits, right?
Yep.
And I've seen it. Sometimes it takes a session or two before the clients get to a point where they start to listen and work together as a unit. But in the meantime, the mediator has to take the stress, absorb it, and kind of spit out something that's more amicable so that the conversation can be productive.
A question that I have gotten a lot of times from, my listeners and my readers is, how do I know if mediation is going to work for me? Like, how do I know if I even invest in mediation? What would you say to that? How can somebody tell? Because there are some cases where it's just not appropriate for mediation. How can you, as a person who's not familiar with the system, who's not familiar with mediation, how do you know if your case is an appropriate case for mediation or not?
Good question. So, like at a bare minimum, both spouses have to agree to mediate. So you can't force mediation on somebody. So what I do is have consultations with each spouse, make sure they both understand the process, make sure they understand they could have their questions answered. But what I tell them both ultimately is there's really no risk to trying to mediate. Most lawyers will charge a retainer, and that retainer isn't refundable, and it's pretty sizable, and both parties need a lawyer. So let's call it $3,000 to $5,000 each. You're in for $6,000 to $10,000 before anything happens. You have to replenish it. You'll probably have to replenish it at least once before you even see any progress. So you're in a lot of money and you're committed. When you mediate, and I'm talking for myself, I don't charge a retainer. I know a lot of mediators don't charge a retainer, but it's a pay as you go, and you could stop at any time. So what I always encourage people to do is invest an hour or two, a session or two, and see how it goes. If it's not working right, you could stop. You've wasted very little time. You've wasted very little money. And if you stay long enough and make some agreements, you can actually take those agreements forward to your lawyer and benefit from them and not relitigate them. So it's a very low risk time in terms of time and money endeavor. And I always encourage people to try it because mediation is the healthiest way for families. It's the most economical way for the marital assets. And it's just the healthiest way to divorce. And it's not often that you could spend the least amount of money in the healthiest way and get the best product. So it's worth trying.
Well, what if you get into the situation where people say, my spouse is hiding money? Is that if someone really believes that their spouse is hiding money, is that a case that you can mediate or not?
It's a really good question. I have a client right now who's asking me those questions. One of the caveats with mediation is both parties have to be transparent. Now I have a CPA, so I do a lot of tick and tying around the documents and the financials that they present, but that's not foolproof. So if somebody has a separate account, There's really no way for me to know that without doing some work. Now, you could bring in a forensic accountant, but that's very costly. There's some guides that are out there that each individual could look at to try to do before they start the process. But I mean, mediators might think differently. I generally tell people if there's lack of trust, you might need more of a legal representation to get records and to dig deeper. But I like to give it a try. I know the questions to ask during the financial review, and sometimes that surfaces things that people might have just made a mistake and haven't mentioned. If there's truly deceit going on, that's hard. I don't know. Do you have a different opinion on that? I know you've got some experience as well.
Yeah. Oh, just a little bit. But yeah, mediation only works if people are going to come to the table and be transparent. However, there are ways, like you said, that there are questions that you can ask when you've been around the block a time or 500. And, you can start to suss out information and see, are both parties providing accurate information? And sometimes, honestly, sometimes people forget. It's like, oh yeah, I had that, retirement account from when I was at this job like 20 years ago, and I haven't, like, people legitimately forget things sometimes, and then they not legitimately forget things other times. So it's about figuring out what boat that you're in, and that's one of the factors that you've got to think about when you're choosing mediation. But I have a question for you, though. I mean, people think of, okay, mediation is an alternative to litigation. I'm going to go to the mediator first, and then if it doesn't work, we have to litigate. But what happens? I mean, is it possible for a couple to start in litigation so that they've got the benefit of a court-ordered discovery process? They can issue subpoenas, they can get the information they're missing, and then once they have what they believe to be full financial information, can they then go to mediation?
They can. And certainly in Illinois and in most states, you're required to mediate your parenting section. So for certain, while you're litigating, no judge is going to want to make decisions for your family. They're going to want you to try it. So that part can come out and be mediated, and it should be. As far as the financial aspects, they certainly can. I think emotions change as you go through a divorce process. And originally, I think everybody knows you just file and hire a lawyer and you go down the path, and then you start paying the bills. And then you start realizing I'm spending a lot of money and we're not making any progress. And God, we just want to get this over with. And we know it's fair. You could certainly take that out of the lawyer's hands, come to a mediator and resolve that. And then the mediator would provide your lawyer with an MOU that they could then use and leverage to finalize your divorce.
What is an MOU?
Oh, sorry. I thought I was talking to you.
Yeah, you are talking to me, but everybody else might not understand.
So an MOU is the product that a mediator provides the couple. It's called a memorandum of understanding. It basically summarizes what the couple agreed to. It's not binding until it's filed in court and approved by a judge, but it provides a basis for a lawyer to draft the final papers and get you in front of a judge.
Makes sense. And also for those people who are listening, whether or not an agreement that's drafted in mediation and signed by both of you can be binding right then and there, it depends on the law in the state that you're in. So, that leads me to the next question. I know I have an opinion on this, but I'm wondering your opinion on this. Should people talk to a lawyer before they start mediation?
This is a tough one. I'll be interesting to hear what your comments are. I don't think you have to. There's certain protections when you file for divorce that will set a separation date or an asset measurement date or what have you, but that's not a roadblock to doing that yourself in mediation. One of the things that I've learned is when you contact a lawyer, oftentimes it walks you down a litigated path. So that's my biggest concerns, because once you start with a lawyer, I've described it to people, it's like opening a door to a dark one-way alley and it's hard to get out of. So It's very easy to start with a mediator, come up with all your agreements, and then hand that to a lawyer and say, file, and here's our agreement, just write it up and we're done. And that's probably the most efficient way, the least stressful way.
Mhm.
That's my opinion, but I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
I have a very different opinion, actually. So this is going to be an interesting conversation. I love it. Um, but I think, being a lawyer myself, no person should go into mediation without having talked to a lawyer. Not that you have to have a lawyer on retainer, you don't, but you should at least spend the money to get an hour consultation so that you understand your rights and responsibilities and how, just sort of get the lay of the land of what the law in your state is. Here's why. I have also seen, as a lawyer being on the other side, people come and they come to me and they say, oh, here, I've got this memorandum of understanding. We've got this mediated settlement agreement, essentially, right? And I'll say, okay, that's cool. I see you gave up this and you gave up that and you gave up this. Are you good with that? And they go, huh? What? I could have done what? I could have, and then all of a sudden, because they didn't know what their rights were going in, it's not that they couldn't do what they wanted to do or give up what they wanted to do. I'm totally good with that. But my concern was always, did you do it knowingly? Or did you do it because you just didn't know any better? In which case there's a problem. And then if they come back to their spouse and they say, hey, I didn't know what I was doing. I want to change whatever it is. They can always go back to mediation and, have another conversation about changing things, but then the trust is blown. Then the other spouse is like, oh, now you want to renege on the deal. And the whole mediation agreement that they've worked so hard to get blows up in their face. So for myself, I'm always a big fan of knowledge is power, and you should know what you're doing before you walk in the door. That having been said, I also see your point that if they go to the wrong lawyer, if they go to a very litigation minded lawyer, then they're going to get steered in a certain way. So it's a little bit of a balancing act that you've got to know. I mean, I used to tell people, as a lawyer, you give me 15 minutes alone in a room with, I will have you doing anything I want you to do, because I could scare the living daylights out of any person sitting
Right.
in that chair, because divorce is scary and there's so much unknown. And I would put the fear of God in, like, that's not what I did, but I do know some of my colleagues didn't have the same problem that I did doing that. So I see your point, but I really think people need to know what they're doing. What do you think about that?
Well, I totally agree with you 100%. What I found, and maybe it's been the mix of clients I've had lately, a lot of them are paycheck to paycheck. They don't have complicated marital assets. They have other situations where most of the decisions are centered around the kids. And when it comes to the children, I don't think a lawyer is needed to figure out what's best for your kids. Um, there, there are areas where spouses have a disparity in income, or one spouse stayed home to raise the children, where spousal maintenance, they've been married a long time. It's a big issue. In fact, this morning I just finished an area, the parenting section with one client, and they're filling out their financial affidavit and providing information. And I told them, similar to what you said, now would be a good time if you two want to consult with an attorney, because we're going to start to talk about spousal maintenance. And this is a 30-year marriage. The husband has been working, good job. The wife has some health issues. She hasn't worked. So spousal maintenance is going to be a big thing. So I'm advising them to consult with an attorney, because ultimately they could decide what works best for them. But it's such a big topic that I really want them to be educated so they know what the parameters are before. And that's kind of that's the way I handle it, is at the right time, I advise them to consult with an attorney.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But going back to what you were saying about the parenting agreement, you make a really good point. I mean, really, what does a lawyer or a judge or anybody else really know about your family, your kids? What kind of schedule, I mean, is going to work for your kids, and what kind of schedule is not? So when you've got two parents and you're talking about mediating a parenting plan, what do you recommend or advise parents to do when they're at odds of, who gets what day, or who gets which holiday, or how much vacation time? How do parents work that out in a way that really puts their kids at the forefront of the discussion?
Yeah, it's a great question because with, at least in Illinois, the child support calculation is based on how many nights the children are with each parent. So you always have to wonder if they're arguing based upon a desire to minimize or maximize child support or else. But the way I do it is I generally start with the kids. Like, tell me about your kids. What are their schedules? What is life like for them? Tell me about your work schedules, because sometimes parents want the kids, but it's just not feasible. So we get all of the known things out of the way, and then we've got something to work around. So once we understand that, the parents generally understand, oh yeah, well, I can't be there to pick them up from school, so you have to have them, or what have you. So I like to try to focus on what do the kids need, what are you able to do, and now let's be creative. The other thing I look at too is the age of the children, because the younger the children, generally it's beneficial for them to be with both parents on a regular basis. But if the parents aren't living close to each other, that's hard to do. But like when they're older, you could get a little more creative and take larger blocks of time with each parent and make, minimize the drop-offs, for example. Like kids don't like to be packed up every 2 days and sent somewhere else. So the age of the children comes into play. You know, ultimately, I try to just focus on what's best for the kids. The nice thing about mediation too is you can get really creative, especially today with higher interest rates and the inability to sell the house or I'm sorry, the inability to retain the house. Some parents are considering nesting. And I've worked with some clients where we've done that, and that's ideally best for the children. It's hard for the parents, but the children just stay in the house, and it's the parents packing their bags, and they gain some empathy and understanding what the kids are going to go through. So sometimes that works out from a financial perspective, and it actually helps the children as well.
Yeah, I had a guest on the show a few episodes ago. I'll link that episode in the show notes as well, where this woman spent 10 years bird nesting.
Wow.
And yeah, and she, interestingly enough, she and her spouse divorced. They continued to nest for 10 years. She remarried a spouse who was nesting in his, so it was a really interesting situation. And it's something that, in my experience, it's tough to make it work for an extended period of time. Like, you can make it work for, 6 months, a year. It starts to get old really fast. But to do it for 10 years, I'm not really sure how she did it long term. But I know it's an issue now because people can't refinance and pull money out of their houses the way they used to be able to do a couple of years ago. And so, what do you do? How you want to keep the children in the same school district? You can't afford that, a new house if you sold it. Like, what do you do? It makes things challenging.
Yeah, I mean, divorce is hard enough as it is, taking the same income and now supporting two homes, and then you add refinancing to that, and it's really a hard situation for couples right now. I feel bad for a lot of them.
Yeah. You mentioned a moment ago that mediation gives you the opportunity to have much more creative solutions than litigation would. Can you, I'm going to pick your brain and ask you to pull out like some examples, something really creative that you were able to do with a couple that they never could have done in court?
Well, the one that comes to my mind is actually this couple, and it's funny because they didn't tell me they had a dog, and that was my mistake. I didn't ask up front, but like we were just finishing, and all of a sudden I heard a dog bark, and I'm like, what is that? And they're like, oh, that's our dog. I'm like, are there any other kids that I didn't know about? So I've since started asking about family pets, but the dog happened to be um, an aggressive dog, over 100 pounds, that couldn't be rehomed. So even if they decided to get an apartment each, they couldn't find a landlord that would take the dog. And the mom watched the dog, and the mom watched the kid. So we had to find a solution where the daughter and the dog stayed in the house. And this is where the nesting discussion came into play. So because of the dog and because of the finances, we worked a lot of time on this, and we came up with a solution where they would stay in the dog and the daughter would stay in the house, and the mom and the dad would rotate in and out until the dog passes away. Hopefully, I mean, it's an older dog and hopefully it lasts a long life, but like that's what we pivoted on. And we got done with that. And I said, no judge in their right mind would have come up with this solution for you.
Yeah, that's a for sure. But I have also known many people who have worked out essentially custody arrangements for their pets, and have kept them going for years after their divorce. Like the pet was almost like, to your point, it was their child, and they continued to have visitation and time with the dog until the dog was no longer, and it happens.
Yeah. But it's I spend a lot of time with clients just talking through options. Like I'm kind of an idea person, so I like to come up with ideas because sometimes spouses will come, well, I want a 2255, or they just want something. And I'm like, let's not think about what's out there. Let's think about your life. Tell me what works, and let's get creative. And how about if we did this? And we'll just throw ideas at the wall and see what makes sense. And then we'll come back to it in the next session. Have you thought about it? So we could be as creative as they want to be. Um, I have another client who's got, they both have two difficult jobs. They both travel a lot. So they're getting divorced, but they have to rely on each other greatly because if they're out of town and the kids need them on their days, they need to rely on their spouse. So there was a lot of creativity that we put into that plan and a lot of flexibility that allowed them both to lean on each other and cover for each other, even though they won't be married.
What do you do in an instance like that? Because I've had many clients who either they or their spouse has or both of them have tough schedules. I mean, there's a lot of travel, or there's, they're expected to come to work. They have the kind of job like a firefighter where it's an odd schedule, or they're expected to come at the drop of a hat. Often police officers or people in law enforcement, if something big is happening, they just have to go. How do you work with that kind of a schedule, as a mediator? How do you get people to work that out?
Yeah, this is a kind of one of those times where I kind of lean into them a little bit and explain why it's so important to be amicable, because there is no flexibility. Like one of my clients is a UPS driver and he can't leave work. Another client of mine is an underwater welder. He can't leave work. Um, and it's just something where they have to rely on each other. So I've got a family where the mom's aunt would provide a lot of daycare, and they're getting divorced. And the dad, when he was out of town, he wanted the aunt to continue to cover for the kids when it was his parenting time, but they're getting divorced. So it turned into a little bit of a discussion. And, I took that opportunity to say, this is a reason why it's good to be proactive and amicable with each other, because you're going to have to lean on each other. And if you want your former spouse's aunt to cover for you, you've got to be on good terms. So that means you have to be flexible for her so she could be flexible with you. And over time, that message gets across. There's really a lot of people act emotionally, not understanding the consequences. Like, well, she's going to cover for us. Like, she doesn't have to anymore. Legally, she doesn't have to. Like, you have to be really nice, like permanently nice. You guys have to be on good terms here because you need each other.
Yeah. Would you ever consider like bringing the aunt into the mediation, or would that just make things messier?
I wouldn't. I don't think I would. She doesn't have any obligation. I think it's up to the spouses to decide how to work together and communicate with each other and support each other. Um,
Yeah. Like personally, I wouldn't do it either, but I was just curious. And speaking of curiosity, sometimes, especially if people have older children, like teenagers, the teenager wants a say. They want to get in. Would you ever, what's your feeling on having teenage kids in the mediation?
I'm not a fan of it. I've had parents who, unbeknownst to me, had their teenager with them at the time. It was just during a consultation in the car, and I was really taken aback when the teenager spoke up. I said, wait, where are you? Like, I kind of was thinking through what we were talking about, and I was feeling, bad about having a conversation in front of their daughter. But I don't personally like to do that, but I do help parents understand that the older the children get, especially in the teenage years, it's healthy for them to make their own choices. Their social life is important. Things become more relevant, and the courts generally give them more latitude. So I just try to prepare them for that and help them think about that so that um, they're okay with it when it happens.
Yeah, I think all of the research that I've ever read or heard about says that children do not belong in the middle of the divorce. They don't need to know all the details of what's going on. But you bring up a good point, because a lot, if not most, mediations these days post-COVID are done on Zoom, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so you don't always know who's in the room with them.
It's, in fact, I had a session last night, and this couple's doing it at home. They have one minor child at home. And our first session, they looked off to the side, and I said, oh, is somebody else there? And they go, yeah, our daughter. And I go, here, come on over. She wants to say hi. And just as nice as day, she popped in and waved. And I'm like, are you guys okay with this? Do you want to continue another time? And they're like, no, she's good with this. So we kind of kept our voices down. They were in the living room, and it wasn't ideal. It wasn't ideal, but they were very comfortable with it.
Yeah, I think parents might not realize how much, to your point, I think you mentioned this before, the kids are picking things up, even though they're in a different room. And really, if you want to put your kids first, you've got to be careful. Even if you're mediating your divorce, that doesn't mean the kids need to know the details.
Right, right.
You
So
know, that's,
I'm with you. I don't think they belong in a session.
yeah, I agree 100%. And I know even in the court system, like judges are very reluctant, and with good reason, to have the kids come in and testify, even though the kids often want to tell their story, or the parents want the kids to say whatever, tell their story to the judge. Judges don't enjoy doing that. It's not a good position to be in.
Right. Yeah, I agree completely.
So if somebody is, trying to decide whether to mediate their divorce or litigate or do collaborative or some other form, what advice would you give them for making that decision?
Um, there's a lot of ways I could take this, but the mediation is by far the healthiest, the most economical, the best outcome for children and parents. So there's really no reason not to do it. What I tell what I tell couples is, if you could talk to each other, if you could listen to each other, if you can be transparent with each other, and if you can have a desire to compromise, you should consider mediation. Um, Now, if you can't, if you don't want to compromise, you don't want to be transparent, then you're going to have to go to a lawyer-led process. But if you could say yes to those four areas, I often encourage people to give it a try.
That makes sense. And just quick question for anybody who's, listening. Of course, they're going to say, all right, you say mediation is less expensive. Do you have any ballpark of how much a mediated divorce would cost compared to a litigated divorce?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge, and this is one of the biggest reasons, but it's not the most important. I think that children is the most important reason, but I tell clients all in, plan on $7,500 for both of you. And I've never even hit that amount. I cap my fees personally at $5,000. I've never charged anyone more than 3,000 or 3,500 just because we get it done. From there, they have to contact a lawyer. The lawyer has to draft their papers and get them in front of a judge. And that could be anywhere from $2,000 to $3,500, depending on which county they're in. So if I was billing 3,000, worst case, you add another 3,500, you're up to $6,500. That's all in for both parties. So that means they save all that money. With a lawyer, and you probably know more than I do in this area, but like a retainer could be 3,000 to 5,000 each, and you probably have to refill it 2 to 3 times during the process. So I think it's at a minimum 15,000 each. And if it's contentious, I mean, I've heard of people spending 50, 80,000. I've heard one woman tell me she spent $300,000 in legal fees herself. And I'm like, I mean, that's just ludicrous.
Yeah, I've been personally involved in a divorce on the sidelines, but you know, in a divorce that cost each party paid well over $1 million in legal fees. I mean, there
Yeah,
was a lot at stake. It was a high-end case, but there was no reason that they had to be paying multi-millions of dollars to get divorced. Zero,
yeah.
except that they fought.
I mean, the way to think about it is when you litigate, you both have a lawyer. Lawyers are expensive, so you have two lawyers. When you mediate, you have one mediator who charges far less than a lawyer, and there's just one of them. And the process is efficient. It's not, it doesn't drag on.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Michael, I want to throw you a bit of a curveball now and ask you a question that I like to ask all of my guests, because this podcast is about not simply divorce and mediation and process and all those things, but it's also about decision making. Because when you're going through any kind of life transition, you're going to have to make a lot of decisions. So if you don't mind sharing, and it can be any decision whatsoever, but what's been the hardest decision that you've ever made?
Wow. Um, well, I'll probably get a little personal, but it's probably deciding to divorce my children's mom. I had tremendous guilt about what that would do to my kids. I never thought I would. I didn't want them to be children of divorce. You know, I love them all. That was a really hard decision. Um, but I'm not going to say whether it turned out good or bad. It just happened, and you know, we moved on. That was really hard. I understand why couples have a hard time with this. It's really emotional. It's very impactful to your family, and you don't want to be the cause of something bad to your family. You want your family to be happy. So that was probably the biggest decision I've had to make.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that probably wasn't, you know, that's not an easy thing for anyone to talk about, but people need to hear that. It is a really, really difficult decision, and one that most people I know don't take lightly.
Mhm.
So So I want to thank you for sharing all of your wisdom here today. It has been so helpful, and I really hope that the people who listen consider mediation, whether it's in the beginning of the divorce or even if they're in the middle of litigation. It is never too late to try to mediate. So for those of you who are listening or who are watching, if you like this episode, if you liked what you heard, if you want more of it, please do me a big favor. Give me a thumbs up, like, subscribe. It matters more than I can tell you. And I'll see you again next time.